after I go that way, it stays with me. Yesterday I didn't move at all, so today you want me to move it. I didn't yesterday. Do whatever you want if you want me to do that. I'm just saying, yesterday I just kept it open and just, moved it. I didn't do
Excuse me? Excuse me? Guys, have to step behind the blue barrier. Nobody stays in front. Thank you.
You got the PBR keys?
Yeah.
Presentation computer wasn't working. Really? We can walk and go and check it out.
So your class is again?
Okay.
All right, Tom, I see that right.
All right, I'll check it out. Wait.
Oh, each one of us.
The mic.
Oh, yeah.
I'm telling you, he was the one that
It's here. If you come with us, put it right there.
포창 경만이 이 하늘 허유허유 올라가서 지어
كمان واقف فوقين بس لسه الوصول متى؟ 8 إلى 5 والله يا أيمن الصفد يا أيمن الصفد.
Excuse me, please. Excuse me.
¿La presidenta?
Sí. Gracias.
Copy. Excuse me, please. Copy.
Presidenta Boluarte. Presidenta Boluarte. Presidenta.
A los aliados habla 2 minutos, por favor.
Excuse me, please. I need to pan around.
Okay, that's good. You're on one channel. Yeah. Channel 2. Thank you very much. Bye. You too. والله روحي كيفك شو اخبارك؟ هل استوعبت روحي النشاط على الفويس؟ لا اموري تمام وكلت امبارح بس اليوم لسه ما اكلت والساعة عندي الان 8 صباحا ساعتين بالموقع لسه الصبح
I'm going to be walking here, so please don't put that there. Thank you. Thank you.
He's coming.
Okay, she's not here. When you come in, when she's not here. Okay.
One moment.
والله
Come, he wants you out. Quick, 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 quick.
FYI, I'm getting a little elbowed up here on this
أمل الصفد
platform.
طلع.
Nada. Cara, já está a chegar. Mas olha. De trem. Sai lá de
Al fondo, Chepo. Al fondo. Llega al fondo.
Folks, slow down. Just make sure your IDs are visible. Both ID. Primary and secondary badges.
If your president is arrived, I will put my position.
Sorry, Wayne. Your mic's right in the camera.
Colocar la visa. Avisa. Una más visa. Que no nos podemos mover así como tres. Ari.
Buenos días, presidente.
Presidente, aquí, Panamá. Panamá, arriba. Para que estamos chiquitos.
Please take your seats. We are going to start now.
Good morning. Good morning, heads of states, excellencies, dear guests, people watching from home. The fourth plenary meeting of the General Assembly is called to order. After our intense Monday, today starts the general debate of the 80th session. Before proceeding to the general debate, the Assembly will hear an introduction by Secretary General of his annual report on the work of the organization. Under Agenda Item 110, in accordance with Resolution 51/241 of 31st July 1997. Please take your seat. I now give the floor to the Secretary General of the United Nations, His Excellency Antonio Guterres. Please, could you take your seats?
Let me begin with two words we have not been able to say often enough in this hall. Madam President. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, 8 years ago, in a world scorched by war, leaders made a choice: cooperation over chaos, law over lawlessness, peace over conflict. And that choice gave birth to the United Nations, not as a dream for perfection, but as a practical strategy for the survival of humanity. Many of our founders had seen firsthand the hell of the death camps and the terror of war. They knew that true leadership meant creating a system to prevent a replay of those horrors, a firewall against the flames of conflict and World War III, a forum for sovereign states to pursue dialogue and cooperation, and a concrete affirmation of an essential human truth: we are all in this together. And this General Assembly Hall is the heartbeat of that truth. It is why for decades world leaders have come to this one-of-a-kind podium. It is why you are here today. Because at its best, the United Nations is more than a meeting place. It's a moral compass, a force for peace and peacekeeping, a guardian of international law, a catalyst for sustainable development, a lifeline for people in crisis, a lighthouse for human rights, and the center that transforms your decisions, the decisions of member states, into action. 80 years on, we confront again the question our founders faced, only more urgent, more intertwined, more unforgiving. What kind of world do we choose to build together? Excellencies, we have our work cut out for us as our ability to carry out that work is being cut from us. We have entered in an age of reckless disruption and relentless human suffering. Look around. The principles of the United Nations that you have established are under siege. Listen. The pillars of peace and progress are buckling under the weight of impunity, inequality, and indifference. Sovereign nations invaded, hunger weaponized, truce silence, rising smoke from bombed-out cities, rising anger in fractured societies, rising seas swallowing coastlines. Each one a warning, each one a question. What kind of world will we choose? A world of raw power or a world of laws? A world that is a scramble for self-interest or a world where nations come together? A world where might makes right or a world of rights for all? Excellencies, our world is becoming increasingly multipolar, and this is positive, reflecting a more diverse, dynamic global landscape. But multipolarity without effective multilateral institutions can court chaos, as Europe has learned the hard way, resulting in World War I. It was multipolar, but there was no multilateral institutions. So let's be clear. International cooperation is not naivete. It is hard-headed pragmatism. In a world where there's leap borders, isolation is an illusion. No country can stop a pandemic alone. No army can halt rising temperatures. No algorithm can rebuild trust once it is broken. These are global stress tests of our system, our solidarity, and our resolve. I'm convinced we can pass these tests, and we must. Because people everywhere are demanding something better, and we owe them a system worthy of their trust and a future worthy of their dreams. And so we must make the choice, an active choice, to reaffirm the imperative of international law, to reassert the centrality of multilateralism, to reinforce justice and human rights, and to recommit to the principles that gave rise to our organization, and to the promise contained in its first words, we the peoples. Excellencies, the choices we face are not part of an ideological debate. They are a matter of life and death for millions. As I scan the global landscape, we must make 5 critical choices. First, we must choose peace rooted in international law. Peace is our first obligation. Yet today, wars rage with a barbarity we vowed never to allow. Too often, the Charter is brandished when convenient and trampled when not. But the Charter is not optional. It is our foundation. And when the foundation cracks, everything built upon fractures. Around the world, we see countries acting as if the rules don't apply to them. We see humans treated as less than human, and we must call it out. Impunity is the mother of chaos, and it has spawned some of the most atrocious conflicts of our times. In Sudan, civilians are being slaughtered, starved, and silenced. Women and girls face unspeakable violence. There is no military solution. I urge all parties, including those in this hall, end the external support that is fueling this bloodshed. Push to protect civilians, because the Sudanese people deserve peace, dignity, and hope. In Ukraine, relentless violence continues to kill civilians, destroy civilian infrastructure, and threaten global peace and security. I commend recent diplomatic efforts by the United States and others. We must work for a full ceasefire and a just, lasting peace in accordance with the Charter UN resolutions and international law. In Gaza, the horrors are approaching a third monstrous year. They are the result of decisions that defy basic humanity. The scale of death and destruction are beyond any other conflict in my years as Secretary General. The International Court of Justice has issued legally binding provisional measures in the case named Application of the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide in the Gaza Strip. Since then, a famine has been declared and the killing has intensified. The measures stipulated by the ICJ must be implemented fully and immediately. Nothing can justify the horrific Hamas terror attacks of October 7 and the taking of hostages, both of which I have repeatedly condemned. And nothing can justify the collective punishment of the Palestinian people and the systematic destruction of Gaza. We know what is needed. Permanent ceasefire now. All the hostages released now. Full humanitarian access now. And we must not relent in the only viable answer to sustainable Middle East peace, a two-state solution as so eloquently reaffirmed yesterday. We must urgently reverse dangerous trends on the ground. Relentless settler expansion and violence and the looming threat of annexation must stop. Everywhere, from Haiti to Yemen, to Myanmar and the Sahel and beyond, we must choose peace anchored in international law. The past year has brought glimmers of hope, including the ceasefire between Cambodia and Thailand, and the agreement between Azerbaijan and Armenia brokered by the United States. But far too many crises continue unchecked. Impunity prevails, lawlessness is a contagion, it invites mayhem, accelerates terror, and risks a nuclear free-for-all. When accountability shrinks, graveyards grow. When UN staff and facilities are attacked, violating legal obligations, so too is the core of our ability to serve and deliver. The Security Council must live up to its responsibilities. It must be more representative, more transparent, and more effective. Beyond crisis response, we must tackle the injustices that ignite conflict: exclusion, inequality, impunity, and corruption. The surest way to silence the guns is to raise the volume for justice. Real security is born of fairness and opportunity for all. Excellences, cela m'amène au deuxième point.
This leads me to my second point. We must choose human dignity and human rights.
Les droits humains ne sont pas
Human
un ornement
rights
de la
are not
paix.
an ornament
Ils en
of
sont le
peace.
socle.
They're its bedrock.
Les droits humains, sociaux,
Human rights,
économiques,
economic,
politiques,
social,
civiques
cultural,
et
political,
culturels
and civil,
sont
are
universels,
universal,
indivisibles
indivisible,
et
and
interdépendants.
interdependent.
Choisir les droits,
Choosing rights
c'est plus que des
means
paroles.
more than
C'est
words.
choisir la justice
It
plutôt que le
means choosing
silence.
justice over
C'est
silence.
préserver la liberté
It means
et l'espace
protecting
civique.
freedom and civic space.
Faire avancer l'égalité pour
Advancing
les femmes et
equality
les
for
filles.
women and girls.
Combattre le
Confronting
racisme et la
racism and
discrimination sous
discrimination
toutes leurs
in
formes.
all its forms.
Protéger les défenseurs des
Protecting
droits
human
humains,
rights
les
defenders,
journalistes
journalists,
et la liberté
and freedom of
d'expression,
speech.
et garantir les droits
And
des réfugiés et
upholding
des
the rights of
migrants
refugees and
afin que la
migrants
mobilité
so
soit
that
sûre
mobility is
et
safe
conforme
and
au
in
droit
accordance with
international.
international law.
Les droits humains sont un
Human
combat
rights
quotidien,
are a daily
en
battle,
ligne comme hors
online
ligne.
and offline.
Ils exigent de la
They
volonté
require
politique,
political will.
mais la dignité ne se
But
résume
dignity
pas à la
is not only
protection des droits.
about the protection of
Elle
rights.
exige pleinement concrétiser ces droits
About
grâce
rights
à un
fulfilled
développement
through
inclusif
inclusive
et
and
résilient.
resilient development.
Des droits qui mettent fin à la
Rights that
pauvreté
put an end
et à la
to
faim.
poverty and hunger.
Des droits qui ouvrent
Rights
de la
that
voie de
open
l'éducation,
doors
de la
to
santé
education,
et des
health
opportunités.
and opportunity. The Sustainable Development Goals are our shared roadmap for achieving these rights. But in order to make progress down this road, we need fuel. And that fuel is finance. We've seen what development done right can deliver. In the past decade, millions more have gained access to electricity, clean cooking solutions, and to the internet. Child marriage is in retreat. Women's representation is growing, but cuts to aid are wreaking havoc. They are a death sentence for many. For so many more, a stolen future. This is the great paradox of our time. We have the solutions, but we are siphoning off the fuel that would make it possible to make progress. To choose dignity, we must choose financial justice and solidarity. We need to reform the international financial architecture so that it drives development for all. With bigger and bolder multilateral development banks lending more and mobilizing more private capital for developing countries, with faster and fairer debt relief mechanisms, helping every country in crisis, including middle-income countries. Protecting natural resources by tackling illicit financial flows and abusive tax practices that rob societies of their future. And global financial institutions that represent today's world, with far greater participation of developing countries in terms of their composition and their decision-making. So let us choose a global economy that works for everyone, men and women. Let us choose human rights and dignity, and let us equip ourselves with the means to ensure a transition for people and the planet. Excellencies, this brings me to the third choice. We must choose climate justice. The climate crisis is accelerating, but so are the solutions. The clean energy future is no longer a distant promise. It's already here. No government, industry, or special interest can stop it. But some are trying, hurting economies, locking in higher prices, and squandering a historic opportunity.
Excellencies, fossil fuels are a losing bet. Last year, almost all new power capacity came from renewables, and the investment is surging. Renewables are the cheapest and fastest source of new power. They create jobs, drive growth, shield economies from volatile oil and gas markets, connect the unconnected, and can free us from the tyranny of fossil fuels. But not at today's pace. Clean energy investment remains uneven. 21st century grids and storage are not rolling out fast enough. And public subsidies, taking from taxpayer money, still flow to fossil fuels over clean energy by a factor of 9 to 1. Meanwhile, emissions, temperatures, and disasters keep rising. And those least responsible suffer the most. Science says limiting global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees by the end of this century is still possible, but the window is closing. The International Court of Justice has affirmed the legal obligation of states. We must step up action and ambition, especially through strengthened national climate plans. Tomorrow, I will welcome leaders to announce new targets. The G20, the biggest emitters, must lead, guided by common are not rolling out fast enough, and public subsidies, taking from taxpayer money, still flow to fossil fuels over clean energy by a factor of 9 to 1. Meanwhile, emissions, temperatures, and disasters keep rising. And those least responsible suffer the most. Science says limiting global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees by the end of this century is still possible, but the window is closing. The International Court of Justice has affirmed the legal obligation of states. We must step up action and ambition, especially through strengthened national climate plans. Tomorrow, I will welcome leaders to announce new targets. The G20, the biggest emitters, must lead, guided by common but differentiated responsibilities. But all countries must step up and do more as we head to the UN Climate Conference in Brazil. By accelerating action in energy, forests, methane and industrial decarbonization. By defining a credible roadmap to mobilize $1.3 trillion annually in climate finance by 2035 for developing countries. By supporting just transitions, by doubling finance for adaptation to at least $40 billion this year, and rapidly deploying proven tools to unlock billions more in concessional finance. And by capitalizing the Loss and Damage Fund with significant contributions. All of these requires government, international financial institutions, philanthropies, civil society, and the private sector to work together, to provide fiscal space to developing countries and unlock new innovative sources of finance at scale, including solidarity levies on high-emitting sectors and debt swaps. We have the solutions and tools, but we must choose climate justice and climate action. First, we must choose to put technology at the service of humanity. Artificial intelligence is rewriting human existence in real time, transforming how we learn, work, communicate, and what we can trust. And the question is not how to stop it, but how to steer it for the greater good. Technology must be our servant, not our master. It must promote human rights, human dignity, and human agency. Yet today, AI's advancement in outpacing regulation and responsibility and is concentrated in a few hands. And the risks are expanding to new frontiers, from biotech to autonomous weapons. We are witnessing the rise of tools for mass surveillance, mass social control, mass disruption, and even mass destruction. Tools that can drain energy, strain ecosystems, and intensify the race for critical minerals, potentially stoking instability and conflict. Yet, these technologies remain largely ungoverned. We need universal guardrails and common standards across platforms. No company should be above the law. No machines should decide who lives or dies. No system should be deployed without transparency, safety, and accountability. Last month, this Assembly took a historic step, establishing an independent international scientific panel on AI and an annual global dialogue on AI governance. Two new pillars of a shared architecture, connecting science with policy to bring clarity and foresight, enabling innovation to flourish while advancing our values and our rights, and ensuring governments, companies, and civil society can help shape common norms. We must build on these mechanisms and close the capacity gap. All countries must be able to design and develop AI, not just to consume it. I have proposed voluntary financing options to build AI computing power, data, and skills in developing nations. No country should be locked out of the digital future or locked into systems it cannot shape or trust. And governments must lead with vision and companies must act with responsibility. And we, the international community, must ensure that technology lifts up humanity. So let us choose cooperation over fragmentation, ethics over expediency, and transparency over opacity. Technology will not wait for us, but we can still choose what it serves. So let us choose wisely. Fifth and finally, to meet all these goals, we must choose to strengthen the United Nations for the 21st century. The forces shaking our world are also testing the foundations of the United Nations system. We are being hit by rising geopolitical tensions and divisions, chronic uncertainty, and mounting financial strain. But those who depend on the United Nations must not be made to bear the cost, especially now, when for every dollar invested to support our core work to build peace, the world spends $750 on weapons of war. This is not only unsustainable, it is indefensible. In this moment of crisis, the United Nations has never been more essential. The world needs our unique legitimacy, our convening power, our vision to unite nations, to bridge divides and confront the challenges before us. The Pact for the Future has shown your determination to build a United Nations that is stronger, more inclusive, and more effective. That is the logic and the urgency of our UN80 initiative. We are moving swiftly and decisively. I put forward concrete proposals, a revised budget for 2026 that strengthens accountability, improves delivery, and cuts costs. Practical reforms to implement mandates more effectively and efficiently with greater impact. And ideas to spark a paradigm shift in the structure of the UN and how its parts work together. Most of these decisions rest with you, the Member States, and we will move forward in full respect of the established procedures. Together, let us choose to invest in a United Nations that adapts, innovates. Real power resides from people, from our shared resolve to uphold dignity, to defend equality, to believe fiercely in our common humanity and the potential of every human being. I learned early to persevere, to speak out, to refuse to surrender, no matter the challenge, no matter the obstacle, no matter the hour. We must and we will overcome. Because in a world of many choices, there is one choice we must never make, the choice to give up. We must never give up. That is my promise to you, for peace, for dignity, for justice, for humanity, for the world we know is possible when we work as one. I will never, ever give up. Thank you.
I thank the Secretary General. The Assembly will now turn to agenda item 8, entitled General Debate. "80 years. Longer than the average human life. This anniversary of the United Nations should have been a moment of celebration. But this is not an ordinary year. Just look at the state of our world, as the Secretary General described. Thousands of orphans in Gaza are wandering around the rubble, eating sand, drinking contaminated water. 90-year-old women in Ukraine are hiding from drones, trapped in their homes instead of living their final years in peace. Children in Haiti, too afraid to walk to school, afraid they might be gunned down by gangs like their friends. And for every conflict and tragedy that seizes the headlines, there are so many more that are forgotten, lost to the news cycle. Like women in Democratic Republic of the Congo, shielding their daughters from armed groups, fearful they might be raped. And Rohingya children spending their whole childhood in tattered tents, unable to remember what their home looks like. Faced with these realities, now is not the time to celebrate, but to ask ourselves, where is the United Nations? Distinguished heads of state and government, Mr. Secretary General, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, people out there in the world watching us. Clearly, we have to do better. But what we should not let cynics allow to weaponize these failures, to argue that our institution is a waste of money, outdated, irrelevant. When the principles of the Charter are ignored, is it the UN that has failed? When tanks rolled into Ukraine, was it because Article 2 of the Charter is not clear enough about sovereignty and territorial integrity? When civilians, children, are killed in Gaza, is it humanitarian law at fault for failing to protect them? It's not the Charter which fails. It's not the UN as an institution which fails. The Charter, our Charter, is only as strong as member states' willingness to uphold it, and their willingness to hold to account those who violate it. Excellencies, yes, our world is in pain. Yes, we have failures. But imagine how much worse would it be without the United Nations? Would a single person be better off without it? Without UNICEF, 26 million children would not have received an education. Without the World Food Programme, nearly 125 million people would have lacked life-saving food assistance. Without the World Health Organization, over 1 billion vaccines would not have been supplied. Sometimes we could have done more, but we cannot let this dishearten us. If we stop doing the right thing, evil would prevail. This 80th session is not about big celebrations. It's about finding the resolve not to give up, the resolve to be better together, just as our predecessors did 8 decades ago. This institution was born in a world on fire and desperate for reprieve. 750 million, nearly a third of humanity back then, still under colonial rule. 2 world wars in a generation, 70 million dead. The horrors of the Holocaust revealed to our collective shame. This was a generation that knew almost nothing but suffering and despair. The signing of the Charter in 1945 gave hope to millions, gave us a North Star that guided our path from the ashes of war, helped guide nations from colonial rule into independent states, helped end apartheid. Across the decades, the United Nations has been a compass pointing toward peace, humanity, and justice. We have not always succeeded. But the story of this institution is not a story of easy victories. It's a story of falling and rising, of pulling ourselves and each other back up and trying harder. We gather here for the 80th time, not for empty celebration, not out of ritual, not to hear our own voices. We gather to prove that this institution matters, and that through this institution, every nation represented here, no matter how big or small, can summon again the strength and unity first shown in San Francisco 80 years ago. The courage and resolve of world leaders, who even while some called them back then naive, believed they could build a better world from the wreckage of the old. They showed then what true leadership is. It's not about imposing your will or putting others down. True leadership is about lifting others up, not out of altruism, but for a mutual benefit, and even out of our self-interest. Because as our founders and every architect of peace since then has understood, helping others is what makes ultimately our own countries stronger. Could any state have faced the global pandemic alone? The virus did not have any passport. We were only able to solve it at the end with the support of the World Health Organization. The climate crisis does not stop at borders. CO2 emissions anywhere affect people everywhere. Even the wealthiest cities in the world cannot shield themselves from wildfires. And imagine coming here by plane, how safe would you feel to step into the next airplane if there were no International Civil Aviation Organization anymore, which is responsible for setting safety regulations for 5 billion passengers each year? How comfortable would you be with your children using the internet while AI is uncontrolled and unchecked? As the lines between what is real and fake start to blur. In this globalized, digitalized world, we work together or we suffer alone. Excellencies, the theme of this milestone session and the high-level week is therefore better together. 80 years and more for peace, development, and human rights. Will living up to that be easy? No. But this hall was not built for easy times. It was built to come together to confront the hardest topics. This session is a session where the high-level week is about resolving differences. We showed some of it yesterday already. But even the House of Dialogue and Diplomacy needs a renovation. That is why the UN80 initiative and the wider reform process are not luxuries, but necessities. We are literally now at a crossroads, a make it or break it moment, politically, financially. Therefore, we have to deliver a United Nations that is agile, cost-effective, and fit for purpose. Member States have to give the Secretary General and this process their full support, because reform cannot stop in New York. It must carry through to every capital. That includes delivering the Pact for the Future and accelerating progress on the Sustainable Development Goals. Again, this is not about charity. It's about addressing the core purposes of this institution, about strengthening our foundations across all 3 pillars: peace and security, human rights, and sustainable development. They are inseparable. Leaving hundreds of millions trapped in extreme poverty, vulnerable to crisis, and denied their human rights is not only a moral failure, it's a recipe for global unrest, terrorism, and the tragic waste of humanity's greatest resource, its people. Put it simply, without the SDGs, there cannot be lasting peace. Excellencies, our future as an institution will also be shaped by the selection of the next Secretary General. And here we must pause and reflect. In nearly 80 years, this organization has never chosen a woman for that role. One might wonder how out of 4 billion potential candidates, there could not be found a single one. Of course, the choice rests with member states. But those of you having been there yesterday celebrating Beijing, one strong female leader after the other from all our continents. Like 80 years ago, we are standing at a crossroads. And it's up to us, to every single member state, to live up to the same leadership as your predecessors did. To act when action is needed. To uphold the principles of our Charter. To be better together. To show the people around the world that this United Nation is there. Today, tomorrow, and for the next 8 decades. Because, after all, it's the life insurance for every country. Thank you. Before giving the floor to the first speaker for this morning, I would like to remind member states that the list of speakers for the general debate has been established on the agreed basis that statements should be no longer than 15 minutes to enable all the speakers to be heard at a given meeting. Within this time frame, I would like to appeal to speakers to deliver their statements at a reasonable pace so that interpretation into the other official languages may be provided properly. I would also like to draw your attention to the decision taken by the Assembly at previous sessions, namely that the practice of expressing congratulations inside the Assembly Hall after speech has been delivered is strongly discouraged. After delivering their statements from the rostrum, speakers are invited to exit the hall through room JA200, located behind the podium, before returning to their seats. May I take it that the Assembly agrees to proceed in this manner? It's so decided. Finally, I should like to draw the attention of member states that during the general debate, official photographers are in the room and will take official photographs of all speakers by the Department of Global Communications. Members interested in obtaining these photographs are requested to contact the Photo Library of the United Nations. By this, the Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Luis Inácio Lula da Silva, President of the Federative Republic of Brazil. I request the protocol to escort His Excellency and invite him to address the Assembly.
Madam President of the General Assembly, Annalena Baerbock, Mr. Secretary General Antonio Guterres, dear heads of state and government, and representatives of the member states gathered here. This
deveria ser
should
momento de
be a
celebração das
time to
Nações
celebrate
Unidas.
the United Nations.
Criada no fim
Created
da guerra,
at the end of the
a
war,
ONU simboliza a
the
expressão
UN
mais
symbolizes the
elevada
highest
da aspiração
expression
pela paz
of the
e
aspiration
pela
for peace
prosperidade.
and prosperity.
Hoje, contudo,
Today, however,
os ideais que
the
inspiraram seus
ideals that
fundadores em São
inspired its
Francisco
founders in San
estão
Francisco
ameaçados como
are
nunca
under
estiveram
threat as
em toda a
never
sua
before
história.
in their history.
O multilateralismo está
Multilateralism
diante
is
de nova
at a new
encruzilhada.
crossroads.
A autoridade desta organização
The organization's
está em
authority
xeque.
is in check.
Assistimos à
We are
consolidação de uma
witnessing the
desordem
consolidation
internacional
of an international order
marcada por seguidas
marked by
concessões
repeated
à política
concessions
do poder.
to power play,
Atentados à soberania,
attacks on sovereignty,
sanções arbitrárias
arbitrary sanctions,
e intervenções
and
unilaterais
unilateral
estão se
interventions
tornando
are
regra.
becoming the rule.
Existe evidente
There
paralelo
is a clear
entre a
parallel
crise do
between the
multilateralismo e o
multilateralism
enfraquecimento
crisis
da
and the weakening
democracia.
of democracy.
O autoritarismo se fortalece
Authoritarianism is
quando nos
strengthened when
omitimos
we
frente à
fail to
arbitrariedade.
act in the face of
Quando a
arbitrary
sociedade
acts.
internacional
When the international society
vacila na defesa da
falters
paz,
in defending
da
peace,
soberania e do
sovereignty,
direito,
and the rule
as
of law,
consequências
the
são trágicas.
consequences are
Em
tragic
todo o mundo,
throughout the world.
forças antidemocráticas
Anti-democratic
tentam
forces
subjugar
are trying to
as
subjugate
instituições e
institutions
sufocar
and
as
stifle
liberdades.
freedoms.
Cultua a violência,
They worship violence,
exalta a
praise
ignorância,
ignorance,
atuam como
act
milícias
as physical
físicas e
and
digitais
digital militias,
e cerceiam a
and
imprensa.
restrict the press.
Mesmo sob ataques sem
Even
precedentes,
under an
o Brasil
unprecedented
optou
attack,
por
Brazil
resistir
chose to
e
resist
defender sua
and defend its
democracia
democracy,
reconquistada há 40 anos
40
pelo seu
years
povo
ago by
depois
its
de
people,
2 décadas de
after
governo
2 decades
ditatorial.
of dictatorial government.
Não há justificativa
There
para
is
as
no
medidas
justification for
unilaterais e
unilateral
arbitrárias
and
contra nossas
arbitrary measures
instituições e nossa
against our
economia.
institutions and our
A
economy.
agressão contra a independência do
The
poder
aggression
judiciário
against the
é
independence of the
inaceitável.
judiciary branch of power
Esta
is
ingerência
unacceptable.
em
This
assuntos internos
interference in domestic
conta com o
affairs
auxílio de uma
is
extrema-direita
aided by a
subserviente
subservient
e saudosa
far-right
de antigas
who is
hegemonias.
nostalgic of past
Falsos
hegemonies.
patriotas
False
arquiteta
patriots
e promove
plan and
publicamente
publicly promote
ações contra o
actions
Brasil.
against Brazil.
Não há pacificação com
Cannot
impunidade.
be achieved with
Há poucos
impunity.
dias,
A few days
e
ago,
pela primeira
and for the
vez em
first time in
525 anos de nossa
525
história,
years of our history,
ex-chefe de
a
Estado
former head of state
foi condenado
was
por atentar
convicted
contra
of
o Estado
attacking the
democrático de
democratic
direito.
rule of law.
Foi
He
investigado,
was investigated,
indiciado e julgado
indicted, trialed,
e
and held
responsabilizado pelos
accountable
seus atos
for his
em um
actions
processo
in a
minucioso.
meticulous process.
Teve amplo direito de defesa,
He has the
prerrogativa
right to
que as
defend himself for
ditaduras
security,
negam
a
às suas
prerogative that
vítimas.
dictatorships deny to
Diante
their
dos
victims
olhos do mundo,
before the eyes of the
O Brasil
world.
deu um recado a
Brazil
todos os
sent a
candidatos
message to all
autocratas
aspiring
e aqueles que os
autocrats
apoiam.
and those who
Nossa
support them.
democracia
Our
e
democracy,
nossa
our
soberania
sovereignty
são
are
inegociáveis.
non-negotiable.
Seguiremos como
We will
nação
continue
independente
as an
e como
independent
povo
nation
livre
and as
de
a people
qualquer tipo de
free
tutela.
from any type of guardianship.
Democracias sólidas
Sound
vão além
democracies
do
go
ritual
beyond
eleitoral.
the electoral ritual.
Seu vigor
Its strength
pressupõe a redução da
presupposes the
desigualdade,
reduction of
a garantia
inequalities,
dos direitos
the
mais
guarantee of the
elementares,
most basic
a
rights,
alimentação,
food,
a segurança,
safety,
o trabalho,
work,
a moradia,
housing,
a educação
education,
e a
and
saúde.
health.
A democracia falha
Democracy
quando as
fails
mulheres ganham
when
menos que
women
os homens
earn less than
ou
men
morrem pelas
or
mãos de
die
parceiros
at
e
the hands
familiares.
of partners and family
Ela
members.
perde
It
quando
loses
fecha suas
when it
portas
closes its
e
doors
culpa migrantes
and
pelas
blames
mazelas do
migrants
mundo.
for the world's ills.
A pobreza
Poverty
é tão
is
inimiga
as
da
much
democracia
an enemy of
quanto o
democracy
extremismo.
as extremism.
Por isso,
Therefore,
foi com orgulho
we were proud
que
to
recebemos
receive
da FAO a
confirmation from
confirmação de que o Brasil
that Brazil
voltou a
has
sair do
once
mapa
again
da
left
fome
the hunger
este
map
ano de
in this
2025.
year, 2025.
Mas no mundo,
But in the
ainda há
world,
670
there are
milhões
still
de pessoas famintas
670
e
million hungry
cerca de
people
2 bilhões
and
e
about
300 milhões
2.3 billion
enfrentam insegurança
face
alimentar.
food insecurity.
A única guerra
The only war
que todos podem
of
sair
which
vencedores
everyone
é
can
que
emerge
travamos
victorious
contra a
is the
fome e
one
a
we wage
pobreza.
against hunger and
Esse é o
poverty.
objetivo da Aliança
This is the
Global
goal of the
que
global
lançamos no
alliance we
G20
launched
e que já conta
at the
com o apoio de
G20 and which has the
103
support
países.
of 103
A
countries.
comunidade
The
internacional
international community
precisa rever
needs to
suas
revise
prioridades,
its priorities,
reduzir os gastos com
reduce
guerras
arms
e
spending,
aumentar a ajuda
and
ao
increase
desenvolvimento,
development aid.
aliviar o serviço
Relieve
da
the
dívida
service
externa
of the
dos
foreign
países mais
debt
pobres,
of the poorest
sobretudo os
countries, above
africanos,
all African
e
nations,
definir
and
padrões
set
mínimos de
minimum
tributação
global
global
tax standards
para que os super
so
ricos
that the super
paguem mais
rich
impostos
pay
que
more
os
taxes
trabalhadores.
than workers.
A democracia também se
Democracy
mede
is
pela
also
capacidade
measured by
de
the
proteger
ability
as
to
famílias
protect
e a
families
infância.
and the childhood.
As plataformas digitais
Digital platforms
trazem
offer
possibilidade de nos
possibilities for
aproximar
us to come
como
together
jamais
in
havíamos
ways we
imaginado,
never imagined.
mas têm sido usadas
But they
para
have been
semear
used for
intolerância,
sowing
misoginia,
intolerance,
xenofobia e desinformação.
xenophobia, and
A internet
misinformation. The internet
não pode ser terra
cannot
sem
be a
lei.
land of
Cabe ao poder público
lawlessness.
proteger
It's
os
up
mais
to governments
vulneráveis.
to protect the most
Regular
vulnerable.
não é
Regulating
restringir
does
a
not
liberdade de
mean
expressão,
restraining
é
freedom
garantir
of expression.
que o que
It's
já é
about
ilegal
ensuring
no mundo real
that what is
seja
already
tratado assim
illegal in the
também
real
no
world
ambiente
is
digital,
treated the
no
way in
ambiente
the virtual
virtual.
environment.
Ataques à
Attacks
regulação
on regulation
serve para encobrir
serve to
interesses
cover up
escusos
hidden
e dar
interests
guarida a
and
crimes como
provide
fraudes,
shelter for
tráfico de
crimes
pessoas,
such
pedofilia
as fraud,
e
human
investidas
trafficking,
contra a democracia.
pedophilia, and attacks against
O
democracy.
parlamento brasileiro,
The Brazilian parliament
corretamente,
was right to
apressou-se em
rush
abordar esse
this to
problema.
address this issue.
Com orgulho,
Last week,
promulguei na
I
última
proudly
semana
enacted
uma das leis mais
one of the
avançadas
world's
do
most
mundo
advanced laws
para
for the
proteger,
protection
para a
of
proteção de
children and
crianças e
adolescents
adolescentes
in
na
the
esfera digital.
digital environment.
Também enviamos ao Congresso
Also, we
Nacional
sent draft bills
projeto de lei
to the National
para
Congress
fomentar a
to foster
concorrência nos
competition
mercados digitais
and digital
e para
markets and to
incentivar
encourage the
a instalação
installation
de data
of
centers
sustainable
sustentáveis.
data centers.
Para mitigar os
To
riscos da
mitigate
inteligência
the risks
artificial,
of artificial intelligence,
apostamos na
we are
construção de uma
committed to
governança
building
multilateral
multilateral
em linha
governance
com o
in
Pacto
line with the
Digital
global
Global
digital
aprovado neste
compact
plenário
that was
no
approved
ano
in this
passado.
plenary last year.
Senhoras e senhores,
Ladies and gentlemen, Your
Na América
Excellencies,
Latina e
in Latin
Caribe,
America and the Caribbean,
vivemos momento
we
de
are
crescente
experiencing a
polarização
time
e
of growing
instabilidade.
polarization and instability.
Manter a região como zona de
Maintaining the
paz
region as a zone of
sempre foi
peace
e é a
is
nossa
and was
prioridade.
our priority.
Somos continente
We
livre
are
de
a
armas de
continent
destruição
free
em massa,
of weapons of mass
sem conflitos
destruction,
étnicos ou
without
religiosos.
ethnic or religious
preocupante.
conflicts.
A
The
equiparação entre a
comparison between
criminalidade e o
crime
terrorismo.
and terrorism is
A forma
worrying.
mais
The
eficaz
most effective way
de combater o
to
tráfico de
combat
drogas
drug
é a
trafficking
cooperação
is to
para
cooperate
reprimir
to suppress
a lavagem de dinheiro
money
e
laundering
limitar o
and
comércio
limit
de armas.
arms trade.
Usar força
Using
letal
lethal
em
force
situações
in
que não
situations
constituem
that do not
conflitos armados
constitute armed
equivale
conflict is
a executar
tantamount
pessoas
to
sem
executing
julgamento.
people without trial.
Outras partes do
Other parts of the
planeta
planet
já testemunharam intervenções que
witnessed
causaram danos maiores
interventions
do
that
que
cause
se
greater
pretendia
damage
evitar,
than intended,
com graves
with
consequências
serious
humanitárias.
humanitarian consequences.
A via do diálogo
The path to
não deve estar
dialogue must
fechada
not be
na
closed
Venezuela.
in Venezuela.
O Haiti
Haiti
tem direito a
has the
futuro
right
livre de
to a
violência.
violence
E é
free
inadmissível
future, and it is
que Cuba seja
unacceptable
listada
that
como
Cuba
país que
be
patrocina o
listed as a
terrorismo.
country that sponsors
No
terrorism.
conflito
In the
na
conflict
Ucrânia,
in Ukraine, in the
todos já
conflict in
sabemos
Ukraine,
que não
we
haverá
all
solução militar.
already know that there will be
O
no
recente encontro no
military
Alasca
solution. The
despertou a
recent meeting in
esperança de uma
Alaska
saída
raised
negociada.
hopes for a negotiated
É
way
preciso
out.
pavimentar
It's necessary to
caminhos
pave the way
para uma solução
for
realista.
a realistic
Isso
solution.
implica
This
levar em conta as
implies
legítimas
taking into
preocupações de
account
segurança
the
de todas as
legitimate
partes.
security concerns
A
of all
iniciativa
parties.
africana
The African
e o grupo
Initiative
de amigos da
and
paz,
the Friends
criado
for
por
Peace
China e
group
Brasil,
created by China
pode
and
contribuir
Brazil
para promover
can
o diálogo.
help promote dialogue
Nenhuma situação
and a diplomatic
é mais
solution. No situation
emblemática do
is
que o
more
uso
emblematic
desproporcional e
of the
ilegal
disproportionate
da
and
força
illegal
do
use
que a
of
da
force
Palestina.
that one one occurring in Palestine. The terrorist attacks perpetrated by Hamas are indefensible from any angle, but nothing, absolutely nothing, justifies the ongoing genocide in Gaza. There, under tons of rubble, are buried tens of thousands of innocent women and children.
Estão sepultados ao direito internacional humanitário e o mito da superioridade étnica. Não aconteceria sem a cumplicidade dos que poderiam evitar. Em Gaza, fome é usada como arma de guerra. O deslocamento forçado de populações é praticado impunemente. Deve expressar minha admiração aos judeus que dentro e fora de Israel se opõem a esta punição coletiva. O povo palestino corre o risco de desaparecer. Só sobreviverá como um Estado independente integrado à comunidade internacional. Esta é a solução defendida por mais de 150 membros da ONU e afirmada ontem aqui, neste mesmo plenário, mas obstruída por um único veto. É lamentável que o presidente Mahmoud Abbas tenha sido impedido pelo país anfitrião de ocupar a bancada da Palestina nesse momento. O alastramento desse conflito para o Líbano, para a Síria, o Irã e o Catar fomenta a escalada armamentista sem precedentes. Senhoras Presidenta, bombas e armas nucleares não vão nos proteger da crise climática. O ano de 2024 foi o mais quente já registrado. A COP30 em Belém, no Brasil, será a COP da verdade. Será o momento dos líderes mundiais provarem a seriedade de seu compromisso com o planeta. Sem ter o quadro completo das contribuições nacionalmente determinadas, a chamada NDC, caminharemos de olhos vendados para o verdadeiro abismo. O Brasil se comprometeu a reduzir entre 59% e 67% suas emissões, abrangendo todos os gases de efeito estufa em todos os setores da economia. Nações em desenvolvimento enfrentam a mudança do clima ao mesmo tempo que lutam contra outros desafios. Enquanto isso, países ricos usufruem de padrão de vida obtido às custas de 200 anos de emissões de gás. Exigir maior ambição e maior acesso a recursos e tecnologias não é uma questão de caridade, é apenas uma questão de justiça. A corrida por minerais críticos essenciais para a transição energética não pode reproduzir a lógica predatória que marcou os últimos séculos. Em Belém, o mundo vai conhecer a realidade da Amazônia. O Brasil já reduziu pela metade o desmatamento na região nos 2 últimos anos. Erradicá-lo requer garantia condições dignas de vida para seus milhões de habitantes. Fomentar o desenvolvimento sustentável é o objetivo do Fundo Florestas Tropicais para sempre, que o Brasil pretende lançar para remunerar os países que mantêm suas florestas internas. É chegado o momento de passar da fase da negociação
to move from the negotiation phase to the implementation stage. The world owes a lot to the regime created by the Climate Convention.
Mas é necessário trazer o combate à mudança do clima para o coração da ONU para que ela tenha a atenção que merece. Um conselho vinculado à Assembleia Geral, com força e legitimidade para monitorar compromissos, dará coerência à ação climática. Trata-se de um passo fundamental na direção de uma reforma mais abrangente da organização, que contemple também um Conselho de Segurança ampliado
Security Council in the two member categories.
Poucas áreas
Few areas
retrocederam
have
tanto
worsened
como o
as much
sistema
as the
multilateral de comércio.
multilateral trading system.
Medidas
Unilateral
unilaterais
measures
transformam em letra
have rendered
morta
fundamental principles
princípios basilares
such as
como a
the
cláusula
most
de
favored
nação
nations
mais
clauses
favorecida.
meaningless.
Desorganizam cadeia de
They
valor
have
e
disrupted
lançam a economia
value
mundial
chains and
em
through the
uma
global
espiral
economy
perniciosa
into a
de preços altos
pernicious
e
spiral of
estagnação.
high prices and
É
stagnation. It is urgent
refundar o
to
OMC em
to
bases
refound the
modernas e
WTO
flexíveis.
based on modern
Senhoras
and flexible
e senhores,
foundations. Your Excellencies, ladies
este
and
ano
gentlemen, this year,
o mundo perdeu
the
duas
world lost two
personalidades
exceptional
excepcionais.
public figures.
O ex-presidente do
Former
Uruguai,
Uruguayan President Pepe
e o
Mujica
nosso querido
and
Papa
our dear
Francisco.
Pope Francis,
Ambos
both
encarnaram como ninguém
embodied the
os
best
melhores valores
humanist
humanistas.
values like no
Suas
other.
vidas se
Their lives were
entrelaçaram com as
with
8
the 8
décadas de existência da
decades
ONU.
of the UN.
Se ainda estivesse
UN's
entre nós,
existence. If they were still among us,
provavelmente usariam
they would
esta
use this
tribuna
platform
para
to
lembrar
remember
que o autoritarismo,
that authoritarianism,
a degradação
environmental
ambiental e a
degradation,
desigualdade
and inequality
não são
are not
inexoráveis.
relentless.
Que os únicos derrotados
That the only
são os que
ones
cruzam os
defeated are
braços
those who
resignados.
stand idly by,
Que
resigned,
podemos vencer os falsos profetas e
resignate,
oligarcas
and
que
that we can
exploram
defeat
o
the
medo
false
e
prophets and
monetizam o
oligarchs
ódio.
who exploit fear
E
and
que o
monetize
amanhã
hate, and that
é feito de
tomorrow
escolha
is
diárias.
made of daily
E é preciso
choices,
coragem
and it
de
takes
agir
courage
para
to
transformar.
act to transform it.
No futuro que o Brasil
In the
vislumbra,
future that Brazil
não há
envisions,
espaço
there
para a
is no
reedição
room
de
for the
rivalidades
reenactment
ideológicas
of
ou
ideological
esferas
rivalries or spheres
A
of
confrontação
effort. Confrontation
é
is
inevitável.
not inevitable.
Precisamos de
We
lideranças com
need leaders
clareza de
with
visão,
clear
que
visions
entendam que a
who
ordem
understand
internacional
that the
não
international
é
order
jogo
is
de
not a
soma zero.
zero-sum game.
O século
The
XXI
21st
será
century
cada
will
vez
be
mais
increasingly
multipolar. Para se
multipolar.
manter pacífico,
For it
não
to
pode
remain
deixar de ser
peaceful,
multilateral.
it cannot fail
O Brasil
fall
confere
to multilateral.
crescente importância à
Brazil
União
is
Europeia,
giving
à
increasing
União Africana,
importance to the European
à
Union, the African Union,
à CELAC,
ASEAN,
aos
CELAC,
BRICS e ao
BRICS,
G20.
and the G20.
A voz do
The
Sul
voice of the
global
Global South
deve ser
must
respeitada e
be
ouvida.
heard.
A ONU,
The UN
tem hoje
The UN
quase
has
4
today
vezes
almost
mais
4
membros do que os
times more members
51
than
que estiveram
the
na
51
fundação.
who were at its
Nossa
foundation.
missão histórica
Our
é
historic
a torná-la
mission
novamente
is to make it once
portadora de
again a
esperança
barrier of
e
hope
promotora
and
da
a promoter
igualdade, da
of
paz,
equality,
do desenvolvimento
peace,
sustentável,
sustainable
da
development,
diversidade
diversity,
e da
and
tolerância.
tolerance.
Que Deus
May
nos
God
abençoe a
bless
todos
us
e muito
all.
obrigado.
And thank you very much.
On behalf of the Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the Federative Republic of Brazil, the Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Donald Trump, President of the United States of America. I request protocol to escort His Excellency and invite...
Kalau kita lihat Donald Trump sudah memasuki mimbar dan segera menyampaikan pidatonya di hadapan seluruh peserta yang ikut sidang umum PBB. Kita simak bersama, saudara.
Thank you very much. Very much appreciated. And I don't mind making this speech without a teleprompter, because the teleprompter is not working. I feel very happy to be up here with you nevertheless, and that way you speak more from the heart. I can only say that whoever's operating this teleprompter is in big trouble. Hello, Madam First Lady. Thank you very much for being here. And Madam President, Mr. Secretary General, First Lady of the United States, distinguished delegates, ambassadors, and world leaders. 6 years have passed since I last stood in this grand hall and addressed a world that was prosperous and at peace in my first term. Since that day, the guns of war have shattered the peace I forged on 2 continents. An era of calm and stability gave way to one of the great crises of our time. And here in the United States, 4 years of weakness, lawlessness, and radicalism under the last administration delivered our nation into a repeated set of disasters. 1 year ago, our country was in deep trouble, but today, just 8 months into my administration, we are the hottest country anywhere in the world, and there is no other country even close. America is blessed with the strongest economy, the strongest borders, the strongest military, the strongest friendships, and the strongest spirit of any nation on the face of the earth. This is indeed the golden age of America. We are rapidly reversing the economic calamity we inherited from the previous administration, including ruinous price increases and record-setting inflation like we've never had before. Under my leadership, energy costs are down, gasoline prices are down, grocery prices are down, mortgage rates are down, and inflation has been defeated. The only thing that's up is the stock market, which just hit a record high. In fact, it hit a record high 48 times in the last short period of time. Growth is surging, manufacturing is booming. The stock market, as I said, is doing better than it's ever done. And all of you in this room benefit by that. Almost everybody. And importantly, workers' wages are rising at the fastest pace in more than 60 years. And that's what it's all about, isn't it? In 4 years of President Biden, we had less than $1 trillion of new investment into the United States. In just 8 months since I took office, we have secured commitments and money already paid for $17 trillion. Think of it, 4 years, less than $1 trillion, 8 months, much more than $17 trillion is being invested in the United States, and it's now pouring in from all parts of the world. We've implemented the largest tax cuts in American history and the largest regulation cuts in American history, making this once and again the best country on earth to do business. And many of the people in this room are investing in America, and it's turned out to be an awfully good investment during this 8-month period. In my first term, I built the greatest economy in the history of the world. We had the best economy ever, history of the world. And I'm doing the same thing again, but this time it's actually much bigger and even better. The numbers far surpass my record-setting first term. On our southern border, we have successfully repelled a colossal invasion. And for the last 4 months, and that's 4 months in a row, the number of illegal aliens admitted and entering our country has been zero. Hard to believe, because if you look back just a year ago, it was millions and millions of people pouring in from all over the world, from prisons, from mental institutions, drug dealers. All over the world they came. They just poured into our country with the ridiculous open border policy of the Biden administration. Our message is very simple. If you come illegally into the United States, you're going to jail, or you're going back to where you came from, or perhaps even further than that. You know what that means. I want to thank the country of El Salvador for the successful and professional job they've done in receiving and jailing so many criminals that entered our country. And it was under the previous administration that the number became record-setting, and they're all being taken out. Have no choice. And other countries have no choice, because other countries are in the exact same situation with immigration. It's destroying your country, and you have to do something about it. On the world stage, America is respected again like it has never been respected before. You think about 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, or 1 year ago, we were a laughingstock all over the world. At the NATO summit in June, virtually all NATO members formally committed to increase defense spending, at my request, from 2% to 5% of GDP, making our alliance far stronger and more powerful than it was ever before. In May, I traveled to the Middle East to visit my friends and rebuild our partnerships in the Gulf, and those valued relationships with Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the UAE and other countries are now, I believe, closer than ever before. My administration has negotiated one historic trade deal after another, including with the United Kingdom, the European Union, Japan, South Korea, Vietnam, Indonesia, the Philippines, Malaysia, and many, many others. Likewise, in a period of just 7 months, I have ended 7 unendable wars. They said they were unendable. You're never going to get them solved. Some were going for 31 years, 2 of them, 31, think of it, 31 years. One was 36 years. One was 28 years. I ended 7 wars. And in all cases, they were raging with countless thousands of people being killed. This includes Cambodia and Thailand, Kosovo and Serbia, the Congo and Rwanda, a vicious, violent war that was, Pakistan and India, Israel and Iran, Egypt and Ethiopia, and Armenia and Azerbaijan. It included all of them. No president or prime minister, and for that matter, no other country has ever done anything close to that. And I did it in just 7 months. It's never happened before. There's never been anything like that. I'm very honored to have done it. It's too bad that I had to do these things instead of the United Nations doing them. And sadly, in all cases, the United Nations did not even try to help in any of them. I ended 7 wars, dealt with the leaders of each and every one of these countries, and never even received a phone call from the United Nations offering to help in finalizing the deal. All I got from the United Nations was an escalator that on the way up stopped right in the middle. If the First Lady wasn't in great shape, she would have fallen. But she's in great shape. We're both in good shape. We both stood. And then a teleprompter that didn't work. These are the 2 things I got from the United Nations, a bad escalator and a bad teleprompter. Thank you very much. And by the way, it's working now. It just went on. Thank you. I think I should just do it the other way. It's easier. Thank you very much. I didn't think of it at the time because I was too busy working to save millions of lives. That is the saving and stopping of these wars. But later I realized that the United Nations wasn't there for us. They weren't there. I thought of it really after the fact, not during these negotiations, which were not easy. That being the case, what is the purpose of the United Nations? The UN has such tremendous potential. I've always said it. It has such tremendous, tremendous potential, but it's not even coming close to living up to that potential. For the most part, at least for now, all they seem to do is write a really strongly worded letter and then never follow that letter up. It's empty words, and empty words don't solve war. The only thing that solves war and wars is action. Now, after ending all of these wars and also earlier negotiating the Abraham Accords, which is a very big thing for which our country received no credit, never receives credit. Everyone says that I should get the Nobel Peace Prize for each one of these achievements. But for me, the real prize will be the sons and daughters who live to grow up with the mothers and fathers, because millions of people are no longer being killed in endless and unglorious wars. What I care about is not winning prizes, it's saving lives. We saved millions and millions of lives with the 7 wars. And we have others that we're working on, and you know that. Many years ago, a very successful real estate developer in New York, known as Donald J. Trump, I bid on the renovation and rebuilding of this very United Nations complex. I remember it so well. I said at the time that I would do it for $500 million, rebuilding everything. It would be beautiful. I used to talk about, I'm going to give you marble floors. They're going to give you terrazzo. I'm going to give you the best of everything. You're going to have mahogany walls. They're going to give you plastic. But they decided to go in another direction, which was much more expensive at the time, and which actually produced a far inferior product. And I realized that they did not know what they were doing when it came to construction, and that their building concepts were so wrong, and the product that they were proposing to build was so bad and so costly. It was going to cost them a fortune. And I said, and wait till you see the overruns. Well, I turned out to be right. They had massive cost overruns and spent between $2 and $4 billion on the building and did not even get the marble floors that I promised them. You walk on terrazzo. Do you notice that? As far as I'm concerned, frankly, looking at the building and getting stuck on the escalator, they still haven't finished the job. They still haven't finished. That was years ago. The project was so corrupt that Congress actually asked me to testify before them on the tremendous waste of money, because it turned out that they had no idea what it was, but they knew it was anywhere between $2 and $4 billion as opposed to $500 million with a guarantee. But they had no idea, and I said it cost much more than $5 billion. Unfortunately, many things in the United Nations are happening just like that, but on an even much bigger scale, much, much bigger. Very sad to see. Whether the UN can manage to play a productive role, I've come here today to offer the hand of American leadership and friendship to any nation in this assembly that is willing to join us in forging a safer, more prosperous world. And it's a world that we'll be much happier with. A dramatically better future is within our reach. But to get there, we must reject the failed approaches of the past and work together to confront some of the greatest threats in history. There is no more serious danger to our planet today than the most powerful and destructive weapons ever devised by man, of which the United States, as you know, has many. Just as I did in my first term, I've made containing these threats a top priority, starting with the nation of Iran. My position is very simple. The world's #1 sponsor of terror can never be allowed to possess the most dangerous weapon. That's why, shortly after taking office, I sent the so-called Supreme Leader a letter making a generous offer. I extended a pledge of full cooperation in exchange for a suspension of Iran's nuclear program. The regime's answer was to continue their constant threats to their neighbors and U.S. interests throughout the region and some great countries that are right nearby. Today, many of Iran's former military commanders Many of Iran's former military commanders, in fact, I can say almost all of them, are no longer with us. They're dead. And 3 months, they're dead. And 3 months ago, in Operation Midnight Hammer, 7 American B-2 bombers dropped the 14 30,000-pound each bombs on Iran's key nuclear facilities, totally obliterating everything. No other country on earth could have done what we did. No other country has the equipment to do what we did. We have the greatest weapons on earth. We hate to use them. But we did something that for 22 years people wanted to do. With Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity demolished, I immediately brokered an end to the 12-day war, as it's called, between Israel and Iran, with both sides agreeing to fight no longer. As everyone knows, I have also been deeply engaged in seeking a ceasefire in Gaza. Have to get that done. Have to get it done. Unfortunately, Hamas has repeatedly rejected reasonable offers to make peace. We can't forget October 7th, can we? Now, as if to encourage continued conflict, some of this body is seeking to unilaterally recognize a Palestinian state. The rewards would be too great for Hamas terrorists for their atrocities. This would be a reward for these horrible atrocities, including October 7th, even while they refuse to release the hostages or accept a ceasefire. Instead of giving to Hamas and giving so much, because they've taken so much, this could have been solved so long ago. But instead of giving in to Hamas's ransom demands, those who want peace should be united with one message: release the hostages now. Just release the hostages now. Thank you. Thank you. As we have got to come together, and we will come together, got to get it done. We have to stop the war in Gaza immediately. We have to stop it. We have to get it done. We have to negotiate, immediately have to negotiate peace. We got to get the hostages back. We want all 20 back. We don't want 2 and 4. As you know, I got, along with Steve Witkoff and others that helped us, Marco Rubio, we got most of them back. We were involved in all of them. But I always said the last 20 are going to be the hardest, and that's exactly what happened. We have to get them back now. We don't want to get back 2, and then another 2, and then 1, and then 3. Have this process. No, we want them all back, and we want the actually 38 dead bodies back too. Those parents came to me, and they want them back, and they want them back very quickly and very badly, as though they were alive. They want them. They want them every bit as much as if their son or daughter were alive. I've also been working relentlessly, stopping the killing in Ukraine. I thought that would be, of the 7 wars that I stopped, I thought that would be the easiest because of my relationship with President Putin, which had always been a good one. I thought that was going to be the easiest one. But you know, in war, you never know what's going to happen. There are always lots of surprises, both good and bad. Everyone thought Russia would win this war in 3 days. But it didn't work out that way. It was supposed to be just a quick little skirmish. It's not making Russia look good. It's making them look bad. No matter what happens from here on out, this was something that should have taken a matter of days, certainly less than a week. And they've been fighting for 3.5 years and killing anywhere from 5,000 to 7,000 young soldiers, mostly soldiers, on both sides, every single week, from 5,000 to 7,000 dead young people, and some in cities, much smaller numbers, where rockets are shot, where drones are dropped. This war would never have started if I were president. This was a war that should have never happened. It shows you what leadership is, what bad leadership can do to a country. Look what happened to the United States, and look where we are right now in just a short period of time. The only question now is how many more lives will be needlessly lost on both sides. China and India are the primary funders of the ongoing war by continuing to purchase Russian oil. But inexcusably, even NATO countries have not cut off much Russian energy and Russian energy products, which, as you know, I found out about 2 weeks ago, and I wasn't happy. Think of it. They're funding the war against themselves. Who the hell ever heard of that one? In the event that Russia is not ready to make a deal to end the war, then the United States is fully prepared to impose a very strong round of powerful tariffs, which would stop the bloodshed, I believe, very quickly. But for those tariffs to be effective, European nations, all of you are gathered here right now, would have to join us in adopting the exact same measures. I mean, you're much closer to this. We have an ocean in between. You're right there. And Europe has to step it up. They can't be doing what they're doing. They're buying oil and gas from Russia while they're fighting Russia. It's embarrassing to them, and it was very embarrassing to them when I found out about it, I can tell you that. But they have to immediately cease all energy purchases from Russia. Otherwise, we're all wasting a lot of time. So I'm ready to discuss this. We're going to discuss it today with the European nations, all gathered here. I'm sure they're thrilled to hear me speak about it, but that's the way it is. I like to speak my mind and speak the truth. As we seek to reduce the threat of dangerous weapons today, I'm also calling on every nation to join us in ending the development of biological weapons once and for all. And biological is terrible, and nuclear is even beyond, and we include nuclear in that. We want to have a cessation of the development of nuclear weapons. We know, and I get to view it all the time. Sir, would you like to see? And I look at weapons that are so powerful that we just can't ever use them. If we ever use them, the world literally might come to an end. There would be no United Nations to be talking about. There would be no nothing. Just a few years ago, reckless experiments overseas gave us a devastating global pandemic. Yet despite that worldwide catastrophe, many countries are continuing extremely risky research into bioweapons and man-made pathogens. This is unbelievably dangerous. To prevent potential disasters, I'm announcing today that my administration will lead an international effort to enforce biological weapons convention, which is going to be meeting with the top leaders of the world by pioneering an AI verification system that everyone can trust. Hopefully the UN can play a constructive role, and it will also be one of the early projects under AI. Let's see how good it is, because a lot of people are saying it could be one of the great things ever, but it also can be dangerous, but it can be put to tremendous use and tremendous good, and this would be an example of that. Not only is the UN not solving the problems it should, too often, it's actually creating new problems for us to solve. The best example is the #1 political issue of our time, the crisis of uncontrolled migration. It's uncontrolled. Your countries are being ruined. The United Nations is funding an assault on Western countries and their borders. In 2024, the UN budgeted $372 million in cash assistance to support an estimated 624,000 migrants journeying into the United States. Think of that. The UN is supporting people that are illegally coming into the United States, and then we have to get them out. The UN also provided food, shelter, transportation, and debit cards to illegal aliens. Can you believe that? On the way to infiltrate our southern border. Millions of people came through that southern border. Just a year ago, millions and millions of people were pouring in, 25 million altogether over the 4 years of the incompetent Biden administration. And now We have it stopped, totally stopped. In fact, they're not even coming anymore because they know they can't get through. But what took place is totally unacceptable. The UN is supposed to stop invasions, not create them and not finance them. In the United States, we reject the idea that mass numbers of people from foreign lands can be permitted to travel halfway around the world, trample our borders, violate our sovereignty, cause unmitigated crime, and deplete our social safety net. We have reasserted that America belongs to the American people, and I encourage all countries to take their own stand in defense of their citizens as well. You have to do that because I see it. I'm not mentioning names. I see it, and I can call every single one of them out. You're destroying your countries. They're being destroyed. Europe is in serious trouble. They've been invaded by a force of illegal aliens like nobody's ever seen before. Illegal aliens are pouring into Europe. Nobody is ever, and nobody's doing anything to change it, to get them out. It's not sustainable. And because they choose to be politically correct, they're doing just absolutely nothing about it. And I have to say, I look at London, where you have a terrible mayor, terrible, terrible mayor, and it's been so changed, so changed. Now they want to go to Sharia law, but you're in a different country. You can't do that. Both the immigration and their suicidal energy ideas will be the death of Western Europe if something is not done immediately. This cannot be sustained. What makes the world so beautiful is that each country is unique. But to stay this way, every sovereign nation must have the right to control their own borders. You have the right to control your borders, as we do now, and to limit the sheer numbers of migrants entering their countries and paid for by the people of that nation that were there and that built that particular nation at the time. They put their blood, sweat, tears, money into that country, and now they're being ruined. Proud nations must be allowed to protect their communities and prevent their societies from being overwhelmed by people they have never seen before, with different customs, religions, with different everything. Where migrants have violated laws, lodged false asylum claims, or claimed refugee status for illegitimate reasons, they should, in many cases, be immediately sent home. And while we will always have a big heart for places and people that are struggling and truly compassionate, answers will be given. We have to solve the problem, and we have to solve it in their countries, not create new problems in our countries. And we are very helpful to a lot of countries that are just not able to send their people anymore. They used to send them to us in caravans of 25,000, 30,000 people each. These massive caravans of people pouring into our country, totally unchecked and unvetted. But not anymore. According to the Council of Europe, in 2024, almost 50% of inmates in German prisons were foreign nationals or migrants. In Austria, the number was 53% of the people in prisons were from places that weren't from where they are now. In Greece, the number was 54%, and in Switzerland, beautiful Switzerland, 72% of the people in prisons are from outside of Switzerland. When your prisons are filled with so-called asylum seekers who repaid kindness, and that's what they did, they repaid kindness with crime, it's time to end the failed experiment of open borders. You have to end it now. See, I can tell you. I'm really good at this stuff. Your countries are going to hell. In America, we've taken bold action to swiftly shut down uncontrolled migration. Once we started detaining and deporting everyone who crossed the border and removing illegal aliens from the United States, they simply stopped coming. They're not coming anymore. We're getting a lot of credit, but they're not coming anymore. This was a humanitarian act for all involved, because on the trips up, thousands of people a week were dying. Women were being raped. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. Raped, horribly beaten, raped. On the trip up, the journey up, it was a long walk. It was a long, arduous journey, indeed. And it was also a historic victory against human trafficking throughout the region. What we did was a victory, and we saved so many lives of people that wouldn't make the journey. That journey was loaded up with death. Loaded up with death. Dead bodies all along the roads of jungles. To get up, they go through jungles, they go through areas so hot you couldn't breathe. They were dying of suffocation. Areas so hot that you couldn't breathe. Dead bodies all over. By them not coming, we're saving tremendous numbers of lives. My people have done a fantastic job in doing what they did, and the American public agrees with it. I mean, I was very proud to see this morning I have the highest poll numbers I've ever had. Part of it is because of what we've done on the border. I guess the other part is what we've done on the economy. Joe Biden's policies empowered murderous gangs, human smugglers, child traffickers, drug cartels, and prisoners from all over the world. The previous administration also lost nearly 300,000 children. Think of that. They lost more than 300,000 children, little children, who were trafficked into the United States on the Biden watch, many of whom have been raped, exploited, and abused, and sold. Sold. Nobody talks about that. The fake news doesn't write about it. With many others, young children who are missing or dead. And we found a lot of these children, and we're sending them back, and we've been sending them back to their parents. They said, nobody knows who they are. They said, where do you come from? And they'll give us a country, and we'll find out, and we'll figure it out, and we'll bring them back to their homes. And the mother and father rush to the door, and their tears in their eyes. They can't believe that they're seeing their son or daughter, their little son or daughter again. We've done almost 30,000 of them so far. Any system that results in the mass trafficking of children is inherently evil. Yet that is exactly what the globalist migration agenda has done, and it's what it's all about. In America, those days, as you know, are over. The Trump administration is working, and we are continuing to work to track down the villains that are causing this problem, and also, as I said, to get back the 30,000 we've already returned. Now I think we're going to have another. We're going to find a lot. You're not going to find all of them. 300, more than 300,000. They're lost or they're dead. They're lost or they're dead because of the animals that did this. To protect our citizens, I've also designated multiple savage drug cartels as far as and you see this, and you see it happening right before your eyes. Let's put it this way. People don't like taking big loads of drugs in boats anymore. There aren't too many boats that are traveling on the seas by Venezuela. They tend not to want to travel very quickly anymore. And we've virtually stopped drugs coming into our country by sea. We call them the water drugs. They kill hundreds of thousands of people. I've also designated multiple savage drug cartels as far as foreign terrorist organizations, along with two bloodthirsty transnational gangs, probably the worst gangs anywhere in the world, MS-13 and Tren de Aragua. Tren de Aragua is from Venezuela, by the way. Such organizations torture, maim, mutilate, and murder with impunity. They're the enemies of all humanity. For this reason, we've recently begun using the supreme power of the United States military to destroy Venezuelan terrorists and trafficking networks led by Nicolas Maduro. To every terrorist thug smuggling poisonous drugs into the United States of America, please be warned that we will blow you out of existence. That's what we're doing. We have no choice. Can't let it happen. They're destroying. I believe we lost 300,000 people last year to drugs, 300,000. Fentanyl and other drugs. Each boat that we sink carries drugs that would kill more than 25,000 Americans. We will not let that happen. Energy is another area where the United States is now thriving like never before. We're getting rid of the falsely named renewables. By the way, they're a joke. They don't work. They're too expensive. They're not strong enough to fire up the plants that you need to make your country great. The wind doesn't blow. Those big windmills are so pathetic and so bad, so expensive to operate. And they have to be rebuilt all the time, and they start to rust and rot. Most expensive energy ever conceived, and it's actually energy. You're supposed to make money with energy, not lose money. You lose money, the governments have to subsidize. You can't put them out without massive subsidies. And most of them are built in China, and I give China a lot of credit. They build them, but they have very few wind farms. So why is it that they build them and they send them all over the world, but they barely use them? You know what they use? Coal. They use gas. They use almost anything, but they don't like wind. But they sure as hell like selling the windmills. Europe, on the other hand, has a long way to go, with many countries being on the brink of destruction because of the green energy agenda. And I give a lot of credit to Germany. Germany was being led down a very sick path, both on immigration, by the way, and on energy. They were going green, and they were going bankrupt. And the new leadership came in, and they went back to where they were, with fossil fuel and with nuclear, which is good. It's now safe, and you can do it properly. But they went back to where they were, and they opened up a lot of different plants, energy-producing plants, and they're doing well. I give Germany a lot of credit for that. They've said this is a disaster, what's happening. They were going all green. All green is all bankrupt. That's what it represents. And it's not politically correct. I'll be very badly criticized for saying it, but I'm here to tell the truth. I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. I'm in New York City. I'm feeling a lot safer. Crime, we're getting crime down. And by the way, speaking of crime, Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. was the crime capital of America. Now it's after 12 days, it's a totally safe city. Everyone's going out to dinner. They're going out to restaurants. Your wife can walk down the middle of the street with or without you. Nothing's going to happen. My people have done a fantastic job. And yes, I called in the National Guard, and the National Guard took care of business. And they weren't politically correct, but they took care of business. We got 1,700 career criminals out, brought them back to where they came from, the countries where they came from, or put them in jails. Washington, D.C. is now a totally safe city again, and I welcome you to come. In fact, we'll have dinner together at a local restaurant, and we'll be able to walk. We don't have to go by an armor-plated vehicle. We'll walk right over there from the White House. They've given up their powerful edge, a lot of the countries that we're talking about, in oil and gas, such as essentially closing the great North Sea oil. Oh, the North Sea, I know it so well. Aberdeen was the oil capital of Europe, and there's tremendous oil that hasn't been found in the North Sea. Tremendous oil. And I was with the Prime Minister I respect and like a lot, and I said, you're sitting with the greatest asset. They essentially closed it by making it so highly taxed that no developer, no oil company can go there. They have tremendous oil left, and more importantly, they have tremendous oil that hasn't even been found yet. And what a tremendous asset for the United Kingdom. And I hope the Prime Minister is listening, because I told it to him 3 days in a row. That's all he heard. North Sea oil, North Sea, because I want to see them do well. I want to stop seeing them ruining that beautiful Scottish and English countryside with windmills and massive solar panels that go 7 miles by 7 miles, taking away farmland. But we're not letting this happen in America. In 1982, the executive director of the United Nations Environmental Program predicted that by the year 2000, climate change would cause a global catastrophe. He said that it will be irreversible, as any nuclear holocaust would be. This is what they said at the United Nations. What happened? Here we are. Another UN official stated in 1989 that within a decade, entire nations could be wiped off the map by global warming. Not happening. You know, it used to be global cooling. If you look back years ago in the 1920s and the 1930s, they said, global cooling will kill the world. We have to do something. Then they said global warming will kill the world. But then it started getting cooler, so now they could just call it climate change, because that way they can't miss. It's climate change. Because if it goes higher or lower, whatever the hell happens, there's climate change. It's the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world, in my opinion. Climate change, no matter what happens, you're involved in that. No more global warming, no more global cooling. All of these predictions made by the United Nations and many others, often for bad reasons, were wrong. They were made by stupid people that have cost their countries fortunes and given those same countries no chance for success. If you don't get away from this green scam, your country is going to fail. And I'm really good at predicting things, you know. They actually said during the campaign they had a hat, the best-selling hat. Trump was right about everything. And I don't say that in a braggadocious way, but it's true. I've been right about everything. And I'm telling you that if you don't get away from the green energy scam, your country is going to fail. And if you don't stop people that you've never seen before, that you have nothing in common with, your country is going to fail. I'm the President of the United States, but I worry about Europe. I love Europe. I love the people of Europe. And I hate to see it being devastated by energy and immigration. This double-tailed monster destroys everything in its wake, and they cannot let that happen any longer. You're doing it because you want to be nice. You want to be politically correct, and you're destroying your heritage. They must take control strongly and immediately of the unmitigated immigration disaster and the fake energy catastrophe before it's too late. The carbon footprint is a hoax made up by people with evil intentions, and they're heading down a path of total destruction. You know, the carbon footprint was a big, big thing a few years ago. I remember hearing about the carbon footprint, and then President Obama would get into Air Force One, a massive Boeing 747, and not a new one, an old one with old engines that spew everything into the atmosphere. He'd talk about the carbon footprint, we must do so. Then he'd get in and he'd fly from Washington to Hawaii to play a round of golf. And then he'd get back onto that big, beautiful plane and he'd fly back and he'd talk about, again, global warming and the carbon footprint. It's a con job. At extreme cost and expense, Europe reduced its own carbon footprint by 37%. Think of that. Congratulations, Europe. Great job. You cost yourself a lot of jobs, a lot of factories closed, but you reduced the carbon footprint by 37%. However, for all of that sacrifice and much more, it's been totally wiped out and then some by a global increase of 54%. Much of it coming from China and other countries that are thriving around China, which now produces more CO2 than all the other developed nations in the world. So all of these countries are working so hard on the carbon footprint, which is nonsense, by the way. It's nonsense. You know, it's interesting. In the United States, we have still radicalized environmentalists, and they want the factories to stop. Everything should stop. No more cows. We don't want cows anymore. I guess they want to kill all the cows. They want to do things that are just unbelievable, and you have it too. But you know, we have a border, strong, and we have a shape, and that shape doesn't just go straight up. That shape is amorphous when it comes to the atmosphere. And if we had the most clean air, and I think we do, we have very clean air. We have the cleanest air we've had in many, many years. But the problem is that other countries, like China, which has air that's a little bit rough, it blows. And no matter what you're doing down here, the air up here tends to get very dirty because it comes in from other countries where their air isn't so clean. And the environmentalists refuse to acknowledge that. Same thing with garbage. In Asia, they dump much of their garbage right into the ocean. And over about a 1 week and 2 week journey, it flows right past Los Angeles. You've seen it. Massive amounts of garbage, almost too much to do anything about, flowing past Los Angeles, past San Francisco, and then somebody would get in trouble because he dropped a cigarette on the beach. The whole thing is crazy. The primary effect of these brutal green energy policies has not been to help the environment, but to redistribute manufacturing and industrial activity from developed countries that follow the insane rules that are put down to polluting countries that break the rules and are making a fortune. They're making a fortune. European electricity bills are now 4 to 5 times more expensive than those in China, and 2 to 3 times higher than the United States. And our bills are coming way down. You probably see that our gasoline prices are way down. You know, we have an expression, drill.
Nós reduzimos os custos de energia porque nós faremos, como a expressão, vamos fazer tudo isso e reduzir os custos.
Heat-related deaths annually, that's a lot. Europe loses more than 175,000 people to heat deaths each year because the costs are so expensive you can't turn on an air conditioner. What is that all about? That's not Europe. That's not the Europe that I love and know. All in the name of pretending to stop the global warming hoax. The entire globalist concept of asking successful industrialized nations to inflict pain on themselves and radically disrupt their entire societies must be rejected completely and totally, and it must be immediate. That's why in America I withdrew from the fake Paris Climate Accord, where, by the way, America was paying so much more than every country. Others weren't paying. China didn't have to pay until 2030. Russia was given an old standard that was easy to meet, a 1990 standard. But for the United States, we're supposed to pay like $1 trillion. And I said, this is another scam. The fact is, the United States has been taking $1 trillion reduction in science historic. And I said, this is another scam. The fact is, the United States has been taken advantage of by the world for many, many years, but not any longer, as you probably noticed. I unleashed massive energy production and signed historic executive orders to hunt for oil, but we don't have to do much hunting because we have the most oil of any nation, anywhere, oil and gas in the world. And if you add coal, we have the most of any nation in the world. Clean, I call it clean, beautiful coal. You can do things today with coal that you couldn't have done 10 years ago, 15 years. So I have a little standing order in the White House. Never use the word coal, only use the words clean, beautiful coal. Sounds much better, doesn't it? But we stand ready to provide any country with abundant, affordable energy supplies if you need them, when most of you do. We're proudly exporting energy all over the world. We're now the largest exporter. In the United States, we want trade and robust commerce with all nations, everybody. We want to help nations. We're going to help nations. But it must also be fair and reciprocal. The challenge with trade is much the same with climate. The countries that followed the rules, all their factories have been plundered. It's really sad to watch. They've been broken. They've been broken by countries that broke the rules. That's why the United States is now applying tariffs to other countries, and much as these tariffs were for many years applied to us, uncontrollably applied to us. We've used tariffs as a defense mechanism under the Trump administration, including my first term, where hundreds of billions of dollars in tariffs were taken in. And by the way, we had the lowest inflation, and now we have very low inflation. The only thing different is that we have hundreds of billions of dollars flowing into our country. But this is how we will ensure that the system works for everyone and is sustainable into the future. We're also using tariffs to defend our sovereignty and security throughout the world, including against nations that have taken advantage of former U.S. administrations for decades, including the most corrupt, incompetent administration in history, the sleepy Joe Biden administration. Brazil now faces major tariffs in response to its unprecedented efforts to interfere in the rights and freedoms of our American citizens and others, with censorship, repression, weaponization, judicial corruption, and targeting of political critics in the United States. I have a little problem saying this because I must tell you, I was walking in and the leader of Brazil was walking out. We saw him and I saw him, he saw me, and we embraced. And then I'm saying, can you believe I'm going to be saying this in just 2 minutes? But we actually agreed that we would meet next week. We didn't have much time to talk, like about 20 seconds. They were in retrospect, I'm glad I waited because this thing didn't work out too well. But we did talk, we had a good talk, and we agreed to meet next week, if that's of interest. But he seemed like a very nice man, actually. He liked me, I liked him. But if you, and I only do business with people I like. When I don't like them, I don't like them. But we had, at least for about 39 seconds, we had excellent chemistry. It's a good sign. But also in the past, Brazil, can you believe this, unfairly tariffed our nation, but now because of our tariffs, we are hitting them back, and we're hitting them back very hard. As president, I will always defend our national sovereignty and the rights of American citizens. So I'm very sorry to say this, that Brazil is doing poorly and will continue to do poorly. They can only do well when they're working with us. Without us, they will fail, just as others have failed. It's true. Next year, the United States will celebrate the 250th anniversary of our glorious independence, a testament to enduring power and American freedom and spirit. We will also be proudly hosting the 2026 FIFA World Cup, and shortly thereafter, the 2028 Olympics, which is going to be very exciting. I hope you all come. I hope that countless people from all over the globe will take part of these will be great celebrations of liberty and human achievement, and that together we all can rejoice in the miracles of history that began in July 4th, 1776, when we founded the light to all nations. And it's something really that an amazing thing came out of that date. It's called the United States of America. In honor of this momentous anniversary, I hope that all countries who find inspiration in our example will join us in renewing our commitment, values, and those values, really, that we hold so dear. Together, let us defend free speech and free expression. Let us protect religious liberty, including for the most persecuted religion on the planet today. It's called Christianity. And let us safeguard our sovereignty and cherish qualities that have made each of our nations so special, incredible, and extraordinary. In closing, I just want to repeat that immigration and the high cost of so-called green renewable energy is destroying a large part of the free world and a large part of our planet. Countries that cherish freedom are fading fast because of their policies on these two subjects. You need strong borders and traditional energy sources if you are going to be great again. Whether you have come from north or south, east or west, near or far, every leader in this beautiful hall today represents a rich culture, a noble history, and a proud heritage that makes each nation majestic and unique, unlike anything else in human history or any other place on the face of the earth. From London to Lima, from Rome to Athens, from Paris to Seoul, from Cairo to Tokyo and Amsterdam to right here in New York City, we stand on the shoulders of the leaders and legends, generals and giants, heroes and titans who won and built our beloved nations, all of our nations, with their own courage, strength, spirit, and skill. Our ancestors climbed mountains, conquered oceans, crossed deserts, and trekked over wide open plains. They charged into thunderous battles, plunged into grave dangers, and they were soldiers and farmers and workers and warriors and explorers and patriots. They built towns into cities, tribes into kingdoms, ideas into industries, and small islands into mighty empires. You're a part of all of that. They were champions for their people who never gave up and who never, ever gave in. Their values defined our national identities. Their visions forged our magnificent destiny. Everybody in this room is a part of it in your own way. Each of us inherits the deeds and the myths, the triumphs, the legacies of our own heroes and founders who so bravely showed us the way. Our ancestors gave everything for homelands that they defended with pride, with sweat, with blood, with life, and with death. Now the righteous task of protecting the nations that they built belongs to each and every one of us. So together let us uphold our sacred duty to our people and to our citizens. Let us protect their borders, ensure their safety, preserve their cultures, treasure, and traditions, and fight, fight, fight for their precious dreams and their cherished freedoms. And in friendship and really a beautiful vision, let us all work together to build a bright, beautiful planet, a planet that we all share, a planet of peace and a world that is richer, better, and more beautiful than ever before. That can happen. It will happen. It will happen, and I hope it can happen and start right now, right at this moment. We'll turn it around. We're going to make our countries better, safer, more beautiful. We're going to take care of our people. Thank you very much. It's been an honor. God bless the nations of the world. Thank you very much. Bye.
On behalf of the Assembly, I wish to thank the President of the United States.
Ya, saudara, saya Rahmat Ibrahim memandu Anda di Breaking News Kompas TV. Ini dia yang Anda saksikan adalah bagaimana jalannya Sidang Umum ke-80 PBB yang dilaksanakan di New York, Amerika Serikat. Tadi kita simak bersama bagaimana paparan pidato yang disampaikan oleh Presiden Amerika Serikat Donald Trump sebagai urutan kedua setelah tadi yang pertama ada Presiden Brasil Lula da Silva yang menyampaikan pidatonya yang pertama. Kemudian juga tadi kita simak bagaimana di urutan kedua ada Presiden Amerika Serikat Donald Trump yang tadi membahas beberapa isu. Dia mulai memaparkan dari yang pertama bagaimana pencapaian Amerika Serikat di bawah kepemimpinannya. Kemudian juga tadi disinggung soal bagaimana konflik yang terjadi di Timur Tengah, di Gaza, di mana Presiden Amerika Serikat tadi menyampaikan bagaimana ia dengan kalimatnya release hostage atau lepaskan sandera itu yang permintaan dari Donald Trump kepada Hamas. Yang saudara, saat ini kami masih bersama dengan pakar hubungan internasional Muhadi Sugiono. Selamat malam Pak Muhadi dengan Ibrahim. Pak Muhadi.
Selamat malam Mas Rahmat.
Pak Muhadi, tadi kita simak hampir 1 jam Presiden Amerika Serikat Donald Trump di pidatonya membahas, saya rasa 80% capaian-capaiannya ya yang disampaikan. Hanya sedikit yang membahas soal konflik yang terjadi di Gaza. Kemudian juga disinggung soal konflik Rusia dan Ukraina. Apa yang Anda cermati dari yang disampaikan oleh Donald Trump ini, Pak Muhadi?
Ya, saya mungkin bukan satu-satunya orang yang agak salah atau salah ekspektasi ya. Saya membayangkan tahun ini adalah 80 tahun PBB. Kemudian dalam usia yang 80 tahun ini PBB berhadapan dengan banyak masalah. Salah satu permasalahan besar kita adalah persoalan perubahan iklim, kemudian perang-perang yang terjadi, dan itu saya dan mungkin juga banyak orang membayangkan akan menjadi fokus perhatian dari Donald Trump. Tapi seperti Mas Rahmat tadi sampaikan, 80% dia bercerita tentang keberhasilannya sendiri. Dan ketika berbicara tentang PBB, apa disampaikan disampaikannya dengan cara yang sangat sinikal, gitu ya. Bahwa PBB ini justru adalah tempat yang seharusnya bisa memberikan solusi banyak persoalan, tetapi PBB justru menjadi